Welcome to Season 2 of Moving with CHD, the podcast and blog where I talk to fellow CHDers about being active with a congenital heart defect. For those new listeners, I'm Hayley and I was born with atrial ventricular septal defect and had 2 open heart surgeries by the age of 1. I've always loved being active, but growing up I wanted to meet others to get a better understanding of the benefits and limitations faced when exercising with a heart defect. Over these next 6 episodes, we'll share a whole range of incredible stories and the realities of moving with CHD. However active you're able to be, I hope you find some inspiration, encouragement, and the movement you love. Hi Taylor, it's so great to have you on the podcast today with Moving with CHD. Thanks for joining us.
Of course, it's so good to see you today.
Amazing. I'm really excited about our conversation. I guess let's just kick off with a bit of an open question. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So my name is Taylor. I am a second-year medical student right now at Thomas Jefferson in Philadelphia. And I also happen to be a Fontan patient. So I have a single ventricle. I was born with tricuspid atresia, dextrocardia, transposition of the great vessels, a couple other things mixed in there. But I received my Fontan procedure here in Philadelphia when I was about 1.5. And ever since then, I've been really interested in medicine. And I'm really excited to be studying medicine in medical school. But along with that, I'm also married. I've been married for a little bit over a year, and my husband is also in medical school as well. So that's kind of a fun dynamic there. But yeah, so growing up with CHD, it was interesting. I was my parents' first child, so they kind of learned a lot with me. Obviously, having a baby with CHD as your first child, that's a little bit scary. You learn a lot of new things, but my parents have been great through that. So yeah, but growing up with CHD, my mom put me into ballet classes when I was about 4 years old, which was a lot of fun. And honestly, ever since then, I have been dancing for the most part. Now that I'm in medical school, of course, I don't really have as much time to dance, but I've been able to do a lot of bar and Pilates and things like that to stay active. So, yeah.
Amazing. Wow. Yeah. So I guess being your parents' first child, that must have been super scary for them. Did they know before you were born whether you had CHD?
No. So that's actually a really interesting story. My mom had no idea that I had CHD at all. I was born normal. Everything kind of checked out with my newborn exam. And it actually wasn't until I was 6 months old that my diagnosis was made. When I was younger, my pediatrician said that I had like an innocent heart murmur, but she wasn't concerned about it. And then obviously a little bit later that kind of changed. So that's obviously very different than like a lot of parents today. Usually these things are diagnosed in utero, especially like something like I had that was so kind of severe and had a lot of repercussions. So that was definitely an interesting twist to my story. But because of that, my kind of surgeries were a little bit truncated. Usually when you have a Fontan procedure, there's a series of 3 surgeries. But because mine was caught in like 6 months, I actually only had 2 surgeries to kind of create that Fontan circulation. So that was definitely a shock for my parents. When at 6 months, I wasn't gaining weight, wasn't feeling great, and then it was like a bombshell was kind of dropped, if you will. So yeah.
Yeah. And it's like you said, a lot of the time they can actually now pick it up, can't they?
Yeah.
But I was the same. My parents actually had no idea. I think it actually put them off having a second child. So I've got no.
Oh.
So I guess we sort of touched on it a little bit, but from what I understand, sort of single ventricle is quite rare, or it can be quite rare. Mm-hmm. So what sort of impact did that have on you growing up?
Yeah, I think it's not really something that I thought about every day or anything like that. I think the biggest impact of having like a single ventricle is just kind of when you're explaining your condition to other people or even to like other doctors and things like that. Obviously my cardiologist was very familiar and understood and knew my condition, but sometimes when it comes to like, I have to go to the emergency room for something, and like communicating kind of what's wrong with my heart, there's some kind of health professionals and people who that's just not really in their like sphere of expertise. So
Sure.
There can be a lot of like explanation and communication that has to like come along with that to try to explain exactly what is going on in my body, and how my heart works and things like that. But yeah, I think also just growing up, I really didn't know anyone else with CHD or anyone, who had any type of open heart surgery. So I think kind of the combination of those two things, it was kind of interesting just learning how to navigate that.
Yeah. And when we talked to you recently, one of the things that you mentioned that really sort of stood out to me was not allowing your condition to define you, which I think is really important. And I guess, why has that been important for you?
Yeah. Well, I think obviously like a diagnosis of CHD, like that's something that kind of sticks with you for your whole life, even if you have kind of surgeries early on, and can get certain things corrected, or changed, you're still never like fully cured in a lot of sense. And I think especially with my patient population, where we're seeing, people who are moving into adulthood, and maybe they're having new complications or changes with their hearts, and things that may not have been anticipated early on. But I think for me, like, it's been very important to kind of view my condition as, this is a part of me. This is something that has kind of shaped me. This is something that has impacted me, but this is not my sole identity. And I don't need to kind of live in bondage to this idea that, I'm like completely defined, and my limitations are like completely defined by this condition. And I think kind of having this mindset that, this is only a part of me has really given me the freedom to kind of explore different areas of life, to pursue what I'm interested in and what I'm passionate about, and to, just try things that otherwise, if I was so kind of focused on, concerns about my health or limitations or things like that, I probably wouldn't have done otherwise. So that's been really important for me.
Yeah. And you mentioned before, obviously, sort of getting into ballet when you were younger, I guess, that's sort of part of that as well, being able to have the confidence to sort of, do that and pursue that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think getting into dance young was really important for me, just to, obviously, like you said, kind of learn about my heart and kind of have the confidence that, okay, like I can be active, I can exert myself in these ways. I think just growing up, it really helped me learn a lot about my own personal boundaries and limitations when it came to physical activity, and also ways to kind of like work around some of my limitations. I think the great thing about ballet is how the classes are structured. You're usually kind of taught a piece of choreography or a combination, and then you do it, and then you take a break and you're taught another piece of choreography, and then you do that. And sort of those like starting and stopping points were really helpful for me to be able to kind of like rest and recuperate in between. And I realized, as long as I have that kind of period of rest, I can catch my breath, I can, kind of get back to baseline, I'm really able to, exert myself and do a lot of cardiac intensive activities. I just kind of need that extra little break time to kind of get back to where I need to be. So yeah, I think definitely that was super important for me early on, just kind of learning about myself, gaining confidence, and just like moving and doing something. I feel like some people, especially kind of earlier, like when I was born, obviously now the recommendations and things have changed, but I think early on there are some people that were like afraid to do any type of, physical activity, that it might hurt their heart or cause issues like that. So yeah, I'm like super grateful that I had that experience and that opportunity to try that.
Yeah, I agree. I've found that there wasn't too much exercise advice growing up, and which, meant trying new things, which was good as well.
Yeah.
So did your cardiologist encourage you to get into sport and activity?
My cardiologist was great. She was kind of just like, you can do whatever you want, whatever you're interested in. Like, you just need to listen to your body. And, if you feel like your body's telling you that you need to stop, like, you need to take that into consideration. So I think for me growing up, like, I was definitely sensitive to kind of like being outside in the heat, dehydration. I wasn't really great at kind of like long endurance running and things like that. That just usually made me feel kind of sick and tired. So I think I kind of like naturally sort of self-selected to pursue something like dance. But my cardiologist was very supportive, and she never was like, you can't do this or you shouldn't do this. She was just very much, you know your body, you know what's best for you. And if there's anything that happens that you're concerned about, we can always check that out. But I really appreciated that type of support from her. And just knowing that there was somebody there that if I felt like I did something that was hurting my heart, or if I felt like I wasn't feeling right, I always had somebody there to kind of make sure that things were all right. So,
yeah, amazing. And you mentioned obviously now sort of being in medical school, so I'm guessing it's sort of a little bit less you can take the sort of exact structured approach with ballet as you used to. So what's your sort of focus now with sport and exercise, and how do you fit it all in, sort of balancing that study and exercise?
Yeah, so in medical school, honestly, exercise has become super important to me. I think kind of like in college, I did some more casual dancing in college, but it was a little bit harder for me to take a disciplined approach to exercise. Also, it was like being a dancer, I just had never really gone to the gym before. So it was like, I didn't really know what to do and things like that. But I think since being in medical school, I've realized, honestly, exercise is really important to me every day, just to kind of give my mind a refresh. It's really helped me after I've studied for a long time to take a break and work out. And I just feel like I have enough mental stamina to like go back and study again. So it's kind of been like a really important part of my study routine, actually, believe it or not. But I've found some like workout programs online that I've really loved and enjoyed. I've been taking barre classes and Pilates classes, which really incorporate a lot of kind of similar moves to dance. And growing up, I had done some Pilates and things on the side. But I've really enjoyed these classes. It's a really good mix of kind of moves that I'm familiar with and I'm comfortable with. And even just the structure of the class is very kind of familiar and similar to some of my dance classes that I would take. So obviously to be able to take ballet classes regularly, you have to be in like really good shape and do that all the time. And I'm not really at that point anymore. But taking these classes and just having that time in my day, almost every day, that I'm like, I'm going to stop studying and I'm just going to do something for my body has been really helpful and very important. And I feel great. Like I feel like I'm in good shape and I feel kind of healthy from a physical standpoint. So that's been really awesome.
That's amazing. And once you've found something you enjoy as well, if you enjoy doing something, it just makes it so much easier to sort of stick to. And
yes,
yeah,
for sure.
Like a break from study as well, just sort of a bit of a mental refresh.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Like everything makes sense after I work out. It's like, oh, I remember what I was studying. I understand this concept now, things like that. So yeah, it's been super helpful.
Yeah, let it all sink in. So I guess, obviously wanting to really understand whether there is a bit of a connection between you studying medicine and having a PhD.
Yeah, so definitely my diagnosis, my medical history has totally had a major impact on me deciding to pursue medicine. I think kind of after my surgeries, I became like very interested in my heart and what was wrong with it and like kind of what the doctors think that growing up, when I was like about 5 or 6, I had an uncle who was in medical school at that time. And when he would like come home on breaks, I would like look through his medical textbooks and I would ask him to like teach me things. I'd like go to my public library and take out all the like little kid like human body books and things like that. So I was always super interested, and I realized there's some people that kind of after their surgeries, they're kind of like traumatized by the medical field and they're just like, I don't want any part of that. But for whatever reason, I just got more and more curious about medicine and just the different kind of avenues within medicine. So yeah, I kind of all growing up was really like, I want to be a doctor. Like I want to kind of do what my doctors did for me and help out other people. So it's been super exciting to just kind of see that dream be realized to a certain extent. Obviously, I'm only a second year medical student and there's still a lot more training to do before I actually can practice as a physician. But it's been super exciting just to continue to learn more about medicine and just all the different areas of medicine, not just cardiology. And I'm just like really grateful for my medical background. I think as somebody kind of living with a chronic condition, if you will, it just gives you a little bit of a different perspective on kind of like patient care and how to approach certain things and how to converse with patients and explain things. So I'm just really grateful for that kind of perspective and to be able to sort of bring in some of my own personal experience kind of into medical care for others. So that's been really exciting.
Yeah, of course, you've seen both sides of it. So
yeah, absolutely, yes.
And what sort of any of the areas that I don't know whether you're hoping to have a specialism at this point or got a sort of interest from research?
Yeah, so I'm definitely very interested in pediatric cardiology because of my background. And I realize, there's still a lot of areas in medicine I haven't explored yet. This next year, I'll start my clinical rotations, so I'll be able to see a lot of different areas of medicine kind of up close and personal. But I think, there's just such a strong draw for me towards pediatric cardiology. I just think pediatrics in general is super interesting because there's a lot of conditions that children struggle with that are, congenital. It's something they were born with. And it has nothing to do with any kind of lifestyle choices they made or how they sort of treated their bodies or anything like that. And that to me is just like very motivating to try to figure out, how can we confront these issues and how can we like really help these children to kind of have the best lives they could possibly have in spite of these conditions that they were kind of born with and they didn't do anything to kind of have these things happen to them. I think also cardiology is just fascinating to me. The heart, just from like a physiologic standpoint, is just so complex and so amazing. There's like electrical components, there's mechanical components. It's just crazy. And we have so many awesome tools and like imaging modalities to really look at the heart and study the heart. And I think that's just absolutely amazing. So I'm definitely very interested in those areas. I've had the opportunity to actually do some research through Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, which is also the place where I had my heart surgeries. So it's been super exciting to kind of come back full circle and help out in that way. But I absolutely love the field, especially the field of congenital heart disease. I think, there's been a lot of advancements made in that field recently. And compared to, 20, 30 years ago when there'd be children born with congenital heart disease and we just didn't really have a lot to offer them. We now have just a lot more surgeries and technologies and things like that to really support life and give them kind of a fighting chance. So that to me is super, super exciting. And I would love to just kind of continue to further that research and learn more about, ways that we can help these children really thrive and grow up into adulthood and continue thriving as an adult. So that has been super, super exciting for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. And excited to see, when you've done your clinical rotations, what you enjoy the most.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, what an incredible field to go into, and sort of with your experience as well. It's, I think for parents as well, that's going to be so relatable, and I'm sure they'd have loads of questions for you. Well,
yeah, for sure.
So I guess to sort of wrap up, I would like to sort of end with a bit of a question on for people who think maybe like yourself, maybe they're really busy, they're fitting in exercise around things, or they're trying to fit it in around busy lives. What sort of advice, or from what you've learned from your experience, would you offer to someone who might be looking into this?
Sure. I think there have been times where I have felt so busy and so overwhelmed, and like exercise was just not an option for me that day. And I think the great thing about exercise is it just is really like a mood booster. And it kind of just changes your whole perspective on your day. And there has like never been a day where like I have regretted taking the time out of my schedule to exercise and kind of care for my body, even if it was only like I have 15 minutes to just kind of like do this and then get back to work. I think, I have just found it to be so, so critical, not only to my physical health, but to kind of my mental and emotional health. And I would just like really encourage people, you don't need to do an hour-long hardcore workout to kind of like get those benefits. You can, something just as short as 10 or 15 minutes, if you're super pressed for time, is still going to be effective, and just kind of like helpful for you as you go throughout your day. I just think it's something that you kind of owe to yourself, you owe to your body. And I think, we have all these perceptions about exercise and kind of like what we have to do and things like that. But I think just taking even just a small step, 10, 15 minutes, and just kind of like committing to that, I think it can make a lot of differences. And I just think, when you kind of start committing to something small, it just becomes part of your routine. And it becomes easier and easier to do once you kind of get over that mental hump of like, all right, I have to, stop what I'm doing and just kind of focus for 10 or 15 minutes on this. But yeah, I just think it pays back dividends. And I think it's so, so important just in your daily life and your functioning. So that's probably what I would say.
Absolutely. What a great way to end. Love that. Even if it's 10 or 15 minutes, just fitting it in. Amazing.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Taylor. It's been great to share your story.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad that this happened. It's so great.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you've not already, please help us get the word out to fellow CHDers by sharing with your network, subscribing to the YouTube channel or podcast series, and leaving your feedback in the comments. You can also stay up to date on all the latest episodes on my Instagram @Hayley.heartfitness.